There's an unspoken reality about children who grow up unseen. They often turn into adults who can't quite believe they're worthy of being noticed. They walk into spaces and instinctively make themselves smaller. They enter relationships and wonder if their presence might be too heavy. When they achieve something, instead of feeling proud, they brace themselves for it to go unnoticed, as though fading into the background is simply who they are. It isn't because they lack ability or value. It's because the earliest version of their self was shaped in silence. Psychologists refer to this pattern as an internalized neglect schema. It means the brain slowly learns to expect neglect, to predict being ignored, to assume that needing care is somehow a mistake. A child who is disregarded enough times eventually stops reaching out. They start to believe that craving affection or acknowledgement is wrong, that wanting to be seen is too much to ask. Imagine a small child in a crowded hall, gently pulling on a parent's sleeve, waiting for even a glance, a nod, any sign they matter. You might have noticed something like that on a playground, in a classroom, or maybe within your own family. The quiet child who doesn't shout or demand attention, but instead drifts inward to the outside world. It may seem ordinary, even harmless. Yet inside that child's mind, something deep and irreversible is taking shape. For them, being unseen isn't just a passing moment, it's a break in the foundation of who they are. And that's the heartbreaking truth. Childhood neglect doesn't always look like violence or cruelty. Often, it wears the disguise of distance. Sometimes it's the silence after a question, the eyes that never meet theirs, the birthday forgotten, or the parent too burdened, too exhausted, or too distracted to notice. The psychology of a neglected child runs far beneath the surface. It molds the way they perceive themselves, how they interpret others, and how they love long after childhood has ended. We like to tell ourselves that children are resilient, that they recover from anything. And yes, they learn to adapt, but adaptation is not the same thing as healing. A child who learns to live without recognition adapts by making themselves smaller, by hiding their emotions, by deciding that their needs are less important than everyone else's. That adjustment keeps them alive in childhood, but follows them quietly into adulthood, shaping how they connect, how they speak, and how they expect to be treated. From a psychological standpoint, acknowledgement isn't just comfort, it's survival. Studies in developmental psychology show that every child needs 3 essentials to grow: safety, stimulation, and connection. Remove any one of them and development falters. But connection, the experience of being seen, heard, and valued, is what most directly builds a child's identity. John Bowlby, who pioneered attachment theory, explained that secure attachment arises when a caregiver consistently notices and responds to a child's needs. That bond of trust becomes the internal map for every relationship that follows. When a child's needs are met with silence, inconsistency, or indifference, the wound runs deeper than the moment itself. It plants a quiet, corrosive belief inside them. Maybe I'm not worth loving. Maybe I don't matter. This isn't poetic exaggeration, it's biological reality. Neuroscientific research reveals that when a child's bids for connection are continually ignored, the brain interprets it as danger. The body releases cortisol. The stress system stays switched on. Over time, the child's entire nervous system adapts to expect rejection. What becomes normal is tension. Their calm disappears. Their emotional balance turns fragile. And to the outside world, they may look merely shy or reserved. When a child is openly mistreated, the harm is visible. But when they're simply unseen, the damage hides beneath the surface. A child who stops asking questions has likely learned there's no answer coming. A child who no longer glows with excitement has realized no one's watching. Slowly they begin to vanish, not in body, but in spirit. Psychologists refer to this as emotional neglect. Unlike physical neglect, which leaves marks others can recognize, emotional neglect leaves invisible fractures inside the self. These fractures often remain buried until adulthood, when the neglected child tries to connect, to love, to dream, and collides with the silent pain they never addressed. Many adults who grew up unseen share similar struggles. Their sense of worth feels shaky. They hesitate to speak up, assuming their voice won't matter. Some become terrified of rejection, keeping distance to avoid the sting they know too well. Others move to the opposite extreme, people-pleasing endlessly, twisting themselves into approval, hoping someone will finally notice them. Deep down, they're still chasing the validation that was missing when they were small. Picture an 8-year-old running home from school, clutching a drawing that makes them proud. They lift it eagerly toward their parent, who's busy on a call. They try again at dinner, but conversation flows past them. Eventually, they tuck the paper away and say nothing. Then imagine this, not once, but again and again, year after year. The child's joy begins to shrink. They learn that pride and excitement belong in silence. Years later, as adults, these same children struggle to feel joy in their own accomplishments. They brush off praise, minimize success, and quietly tell themselves it doesn't matter. The child who was ignored becomes the adult who self-neglects. Science supports this. A 2019 study in the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry found that emotional neglect in early life strongly predicts persistent loneliness later on, even among adults surrounded by friends or family. It's not about how many people they know. It's about whether they ever felt truly seen. That inner void rarely fills on its own. And most parents who ignore their children aren't cruel. Often they're exhausted, overwhelmed, or unaware. Some are fighting depression, financial stress, or endless work hours. A parent juggling 2 jobs may come home emotionally depleted. Another, lost in their own anxiety, may not even register a child's quiet plea for attention. Today, the constant pull of screens and notifications steals even more of that presence. But to the child, intention doesn't matter. The absence feels identical. The emptiness is real regardless of why it happens. That's why understanding the inner world of the overlooked child is so essential. Because awareness is where healing starts. When you begin to see the pattern, you can finally interrupt it. Children who grow up unnoticed develop coping habits that, at first glance, might even appear admirable. Some become fiercely self-reliant, mastering survival on their own. Others turn into overachievers, chasing excellence as a substitute for acknowledgement. Some become the calm mediators, doing anything to avoid conflict so they can preserve even the illusion of connection. Yet behind all these traits lies an undercurrent of exhaustion. The child who learned independence too early becomes the adult who can't rely on anyone. The high achiever becomes the restless perfectionist, never content. The peacekeeper becomes the chronic people pleaser, saying yes when they mean no. And perhaps the saddest transformation is the one who simply gives up. The child who decides that effort is pointless because no one notices anyway. That same resignation can follow them into adulthood, turning into apathy, lost motivation, and fading hope. Most who grew up ignored rarely talk about it, because how do you describe the pain of being unseen? There's no dramatic event, no obvious wound to point to, just memories of moments that should have mattered and didn't. That quiet absence becomes a language of its own, one that teaches silence, and silence in turn becomes a wall. Adults who live through this kind of neglect often hesitate to reach for help, haunted by the fear of being dismissed again. In therapy, they might say things like, "Nothing really bad ever happened to me." But what they don't yet realize is that the lack of something vital is itself a wound. It's like growing up in a house with no oxygen. You may survive, but you're always gasping. The consequences of this kind of invisibility are measurable. Research from the National Institute of Mental Health shows that adults who experienced emotional neglect as children face greater risks of anxiety, depression, and struggles with emotional intimacy. Another study from the Harvard Center on the Developing Child reveals that consistent acknowledgement during childhood strengthens the brain's circuits for resilience, while neglect weakens them. In simple terms, being noticed isn't a luxury, it's part of human development. But this doesn't mean every neglected child is broken beyond repair. Many grow into deeply empathetic, intuitive adults precisely because they know what it's like to be overlooked. Their compassion becomes their strength. Yet their path forward is often steeper, lined with old beliefs they never chose. Beliefs like, "I'm too much," or "I don't matter." Undoing those takes time. Healing doesn't begin with perfection or instant confidence. It starts with acknowledgement, with whispering the truth to yourself. What I went through was real. My feelings were valid, my pain mattered. For the adult who once was that quiet, unseen child, the first step toward recovery often begins with giving themselves what they were once denied: recognition. And though that might sound abstract, it's remarkably concrete. It's found in the tiny moments, celebrating a small victory instead of brushing it aside, saying how you feel out loud instead of swallowing it, daring to believe that your thoughts carry weight. Healing begins not when someone else finally sees you, but when you decide to see yourself. The truth is, the need for acknowledgement never fades. You don't outgrow it. It doesn't disappear with age. It simply sinks deeper, waiting to be recognized again. Healing is the process of bringing that need back into the light. You can see its traces in friendships. The once ignored child often becomes the quiet listener, the dependable one who absorbs everyone's stories yet rarely shares their own. They show up for others but struggle to ask for help themselves. To outsiders, they appear selfless. Inside, a small ache whispers, "Why don't I matter as much?" It isn't selfishness. It's the search for balance that was never given. In love, the pattern deepens. Some adults who grew up unseen cling tightly to affection, desperate to hold on to anyone who makes them feel noticed. Others build walls, keeping distance because intimacy feels like a risk. Both are different ways of protecting the same wound, the fear that love will vanish, that their needs will again be too much. And yet, within this contradiction lies something extraordinary. The ignored child often matures into one of the most empathetic adults you'll ever meet, precisely because they understand the pain of invisibility. Their sensitivity becomes a kind of radar. They read emotions others miss. Studies in developmental psychology confirm this. Neglected children often develop acute observational skills. They learn to read faces, to listen for tone, to notice subtle changes in mood. Survival taught them to sense safety before speaking, to detect when silence was the only safe choice. That awareness can evolve into a gift, but it carries a cost. They tune in to everyone else while forgetting to listen to themselves. There's another piece we seldom name. When a child grows up without acknowledgement, their sense of identity stays blurred. They were never fully mirrored back. Their emotions and ideas weren't reflected enough to feel real. So as adults, they seek validation not from vanity, but from a lifelong hunger to see themselves clearly. Identity forms through connection. Without it, selfhood becomes unstable. And yet here's where something quietly beautiful emerges. The human spirit is astonishingly resilient. Even children who spent years unseen carry a stubborn spark of hope. That's why so many who were neglected turn inward as adults. They read about psychology, journal their pain, sit in therapy, chase self-understanding. They refuse to live inside the silence that raised them. That desire to heal is proof of life, proof of strength. Neuroscience shows the brain isn't fixed. It rewires with experience. Every time an adult who grew up ignored speaks and is heard, their brain registers safety. Every time they set a boundary and someone respects it, their nervous system learns trust. Each healthy connection becomes a single drop, carving away the stone of old pain. Healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It looks like finally telling a friend, "Please listen to me for a minute." It looks like saying, "I feel hurt," instead of swallowing the feeling. It's sitting alone and softly affirming, "My feelings matter, even if no one taught me that before." These quiet acts may seem small, but they are revolutions, each one rewriting the story of silence into a story of self-worth. And the truth is, none of this path is simple. Those who grew up unseen often carry a lifelong fear of being rejected. For them, speaking up can feel like standing in front of a storm. Setting boundaries can feel like abandoning someone. Asking for support can feel like failure. Yet the bravery to do these things in spite of the fear, that's what begins to stitch the self back together. It's also vital to understand this. Parents who ignored their children weren't always heartless. Many of them were once invisible children themselves. Some were consumed by stress, mental exhaustion, or grief. Some didn't even realize the weight of their silence. This doesn't erase the wound, but it explains the pattern. Neglect often passes quietly from one generation to the next, disguised as survival. And when one person begins to heal from being ignored, they're not only mending their own heart, They're ending a cycle that may have lasted lifetimes. Think of it this way. Every once-forgotten child who learns to hear their own voice becomes a friend, partner, or parent who listens more deeply. Every person who learns to honor their needs teaches those around them that their needs matter too. Healing never stops at the individual. It ripples outward, transforming everything it touches. And here lies one of the most powerful truths. The child who once felt invisible often believes they left no trace in the world. But their story holds immense strength. Their journey from sigh